The moment the new executive handed me my termination papers, she had no idea she was actually signing the death warrant for her own career. Tabitha sat behind her expensive mahogany desk, smirk firmly in place, completely oblivious to the massive corporate landmine she just stepped on. She thought she was clearing out old baggage on her very first day. Instead, she triggered an irreversible legal trapdoor that I spent 15 years building. To understand how a routine firing became an absolute corporate execution, you have to realize who I am to this empire. I never cared about having my face on glossy brochures or my name printed on glass doors. While Harrison, the founder, chased public praise and media attention, I stayed completely in the dark. I handled the structure, the legal framework, and the deep financial compliance that kept us alive. Harrison was a brilliant creator, but he was completely reckless with paperwork and basic compliance. In the early days, the company was just a folding chairs and a mountain of mounting debt. I stepped in to clean up his legal disasters, refusing standard bonuses and instead demanding tiny percentages of equity. Over 15 long years, I quietly collected shares from exiting partners and expensive divorces, building an unbreakable fortress. When Harrison brought his new daughter-in-law into the business as the chief strategy officer, everything fractured. Tabitha had a fresh degree and an enormous amount of unearned arrogance. She walked into my office on Monday morning with 2 security guards and a trembling human resources assistant. Without looking up from her screen, she told me that my services were no longer required and demanded my badge immediately. I did not argue, beg, or show a single shred of fear to this child. I calmly stood up, smoothed down my blazer, and handed over my keycard with a quiet smile. I told Tabitha that the upcoming board meeting in 3 hours would be incredibly educational for her. As I walked past the stunned security guards, I felt a deep wave of satisfaction because I knew exactly what was coming. Tabitha believed she won her very first corporate battle, probably preparing a long post for social media about leadership. What she did not know was that she just activated a specific emergency clause buried deep inside the shareholder agreement. I designed that hidden contract years ago to protect the company from rogue family members. The clause stated that any unapproved termination of an officer by a non-equity employee immediately froze all executive powers. As I sat in a coffee shop across the street, the legal clock began ticking rapidly. My automated legal service dispatched certified, time-stamped packets to every single investor and board member. The documents revealed the grand secret that Harrison always hidden from his inner circle. I did not just own a minor stake in the business. I held a massive 72% majority of all voting shares, making me the ultimate boss. The panic started at the country club where Harrison was playing golf with wealthy clients. His phone rang 3 times before he finally answered the furious call from his chief legal advisor. The attorney told him to drop his clubs and return to headquarters immediately because his daughter-in-law had ruined everything. Harrison arrived at the office 20 minutes later, completely sweating through his expensive shirt, demanding answers from his panicked staff. Inside the main glass conference room, the atmosphere was completely frozen. The lead attorney opened a thick folder and read the severe terms of the activated clause to the entire board. Because Tabitha held 0 actual equity, her unilateral decision to fire me was entirely illegal and invalid. Furthermore, the clause stripped Harrison of his temporary leadership powers, transferring full control back to the majority owner. Harrison slammed his fists onto the table, asking who signed the paperwork that caused this disaster. The room remained perfectly silent, until the lawyer confirmed that Tabitha had acted entirely alone without consulting anyone. The founder looked like the air had been pulled right out of his lungs as the reality settled in. He realized his family no longer controlled the empire because a silent giant owned the majority. Meanwhile, up on the top floor, Tabitha was celebrating her perceived victory with a glass of expensive champagne. She was typing a long message to her husband about cleaning house and establishing her dominant authority. She attempted to log into the main company financial dashboard to review budgets, but the screen flashed a bright red error message. Every single system was suddenly rejecting her credentials, freezing her completely out. The technology director had already spotted the illegal termination request hours ago, and immediately notified the legal team. He knew that my personal profile was tied directly into the core network architecture, managing compliance and federal filing systems. If they deleted my profile, the entire multi-million-dollar network would instantly crash. Legal ordered him to leave my access untouched while removing all the permissions of Tabitha instead. The 3-hour deadline expired, and the emergency board meeting officially commenced with heavy tension. Tabitha confidently strolled into the boardroom with her notepad, completely unaware that she was walking into an ambush. She expected praise for her decisive action against an old employee. Instead, she found her father-in-law sitting in total silence, staring at the floor with a completely broken expression. The lead attorney stood up and flatly informed Tabitha that her employment was under immediate suspension for violating corporate bylaws. Her jaw dropped in total shock as she looked at Harrison for protection, but he refused to meet her gaze. The lawyer explained that her attempt to remove me had legally dismantled her own position and cost the family their operational control. She was stripped of all titles instantly. I walked into the boardroom precisely at that moment, holding the official shareholder ledger in my hands. The investors stood up out of pure respect, acknowledging the true power in the room. I looked at Tabitha and told her that real control is never inherited through a marriage or a fancy title. My termination was officially wiped from the record, and security escorted her out of the building instead. Harrison apologized quietly as the board meeting wrapped up, knowing he could never challenge my authority again. This experience taught everyone in that room a powerful lesson about humility and the true weight of legal contracts. Arrogance can make people blind to the hidden forces operating right beneath their feet. In the end, the loudest people in the room are rarely the ones holding the actual keys to the kingdom.